Hi, I'm Steve McCord, Cattaraugus County Director of Veteran Services, and this is Our Veterans, Their Stories, preserving our heroes' stories, one story at a time.
I was a traditional guardsman up here in Buffalo, Connecticut Street Armory, and combat engineer, lieutenant, and I branch changed to armor, and so they send you to Armor Advanced course at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Off I go to there, come back. It was a long course, so several months, and I knew right when I was leaving I was going to a quote armor unit, a tank outfit. I just didn't know which one exactly, but 42nd Division, 3rd Brigade here is Buffalo region, so pretty safe to say 127 armor. And right as I was going down there, I got my paperwork, my orders saying I was going to go to Charlie Company 127 in Olean. So sort of as I went away to school, I knew I was coming to Olean when I was done.
Let's talk about Kentucky. Now, you were a guardsman,
Right.
So my first question is, how did the usual guys treat the guardsman guys? Were they good to you?
Yeah, I would say as a rule of thumb, there's always I'll say intercomponent rivalry, active Army, active component versus guard versus reserve. Not too much armor in the reserve, Army reserve. Pretty good. This was early, like 1990 type time frame, so pre-Gulf War I. Also, it's a little bit of who you are as a person. If you're a ding dong, guess what? You get the reputation. If you're a team player, if you try to do the right thing, I think people take you generally at your merits. So from that point of view, it was a pretty good experience. I think the thing that was most instructive and illustrative for me was I was always wondering, was I going to measure up to these AC guys because they do it all the time and I'm doing it in theory, the caveat, 1 weekend a month. But you come to find out just because they're there full time doesn't mean they're doing armor stuff full time. So that was good to know how that you can measure up with some study and application.
What machinery did you work on? Primarily tanks?
Tanks. Yeah, I was as a lieutenant, you're a tank commander, so you fight your tank, crew of 4. And I got to Olean, arrived at Olean as the executive officer, the second in charge person. So I worked that for a few months and then planned transition with the outgoing company commander. I took over as the Charlie Company commander for that time period. So
tell me about the tank that it was in Olean.
So interestingly, it was an M48A5, which is a Vietnam era tank. And pre-internet, I know hard to believe in these days, but you just can't look up what does everybody have. So I knew that the New York Army Guard did not have M1 tanks, which were the incoming mainstay of the active Army. They still had M60A3s in the AC as well. So I spent weekends and nights training on the M60 turret trainer, which is, the guts of the tank, relearning the fire control system, all that kind of stuff. And so I would be at least mildly competent when I got to Olean. And I got there, and I remember very vividly the Sergeant First Class AGR Readiness NCO was showing me around, and we walk into the garage where the tanks were, and the garage is elevated, so you don't see the whole tank. You're really at the turret fender level. And I get inside the turret and I'm looking around. Nothing looks really familiar. Not compared to an M60A3 for sure. And finally I said to Sergeant Kerr, I go, "What's that thing right there?" And he's all offended. He says, "Sir, that's a whiz wheel." I go, what in the blank is a whiz wheel? He goes, "Sir, that's a coincidence rangefinder." And he goes on the diatribe, what a great tank this is. And I said, "Oh my God, it's a Vietnam era tank." So, that was a brand new experience because it has the mirrors, and the coincidence, the mirrors, as you turn the dial, it brings it in. And when the visualization of the image in the periscope comes together, that's your range and your focus. So that's when the gun super elevates for, that's your ballistic solution, which is not at all how it works in a digitized tank, much less an M60A3, which is a semi-digitized tank.
So you were trained on the space shuttle, and you went and flew what the Wright brothers flew.
Maybe not quite as dramatic, but it was dramatic at the time, I'll tell you that. And then 9 months later, we did Table 8, which is the gunnery at Fort Drum. Table 8 is the, at the tank level, the qualifying full up live gunnery quals you have to hit to be certified. So that was very interesting, bizarre experience.
When you came and did your monthly thing, where'd you take the tanks? Where'd they go out at?
Well, you don't use them every month because there's a lot of run up. There's individual proficiencies, there's team, there's crew, there's full up. So we would make use agreements with local farmers in the greater Olean area. And when we went out to use the tanks, we would go down the old Route 17 there, Southern Tier Expressway, police escort. We had to coordinate with state police and take them to wherever we were going to use them, coordinate for a contract fuel on site, things like that. But, a lot of good support out in the area for trying to make that happen.
Tell me about your weekends in Olean. Where was the place you liked to hang?
There wasn't a lot of hanging because we were so busy. One thing I do remember that was a friction point that we got through shortly after I took over command. It became apparent to me that all these guys are coming from all aspects and areas of Western New York, in some cases near Rochester to Olean, quite the drive, for the weekend drill. And they're staying in a hotel, which is probably taking half and 3/4 and more of their paycheck. And so that kind of rubbed me wrong. And I had a lot of spirited discourse with the Armory superintendent, since he was the full-time superintendent, but I was the officer in charge, OIC, as to what right should look like. And in the end, we opened up the Armory for weekends for people to sleep there, bring cots or that kind of thing. And so that's what happened. And so really Saturday night was mostly a planning night with me and the leadership team, first sergeant, lieutenants, platoon sergeants for the next day, or kind of after action, fix what happened that day, what do we got to do the next day, near-term planning for the next month. So that was kind of the general routine. There wasn't a lot of cowboying around. Not by us. I can't speak for the young tankers, because tankers do stuff.
What's the difference between a reservist and a National Guardsman?
So the name, I would say the phrase sometimes is convoluted in terms of that they're not the same thing, but they do a lot of the same things. Army reservist is part-time soldier, much like a National Guardsman. The main difference is, even in part-time status, an Army reservist chain of command up to the top is the president, versus the National Guard, and their Title 10 status, USC Code Title 10 governs that legality and status that they drill in. And the National Guard, by contrast, works in Title 32, which is under state status, state control. So in Title 32, the governor of that state is their, quote, commander-in-chief, not the president. And so you have 54 different National Guards, so you have the 50 states, territories, and districts, if you will, that make up the 54. So that's the main legal difference. National Guards are much more state, I would say, and community-based, just because that's how it's grown up. But the Army Reserve over time is more regionally based. But they are in the same part-time status. From a pragmatic standpoint, Army Reserve would have more of the support, combat support, medical type stuff, logistics. I know I'm forgetting something and I'll be chastised. But National Guard has a lot more of the combat arms, backup for the active component from field artillery, armor, aviation, infantry, all that. And also they have logistics, medical as well. The concentrations are just different between the two components. The first time I ever really remember a big call up, I was in the 27th Infantry Brigade out of Syracuse. This is post the time in Olean. So the joke was I was the lone armor guy in the infantry to help them think. To all my infantry buds, a little jab. But so we went to drill in January. This is 95, 4, I don't remember, something like that. Mid-90s. And they had the big ice storm in northern New York and Quebec. And all the power poles were down for a very long time. So we went to drill for that weekend, didn't come home for over a month because they mobilized us to go up to northern New York and help do relief and rescue operations. And that was the first, time that we did anything that was super, what's the right words? That was over the top in terms, you just didn't go for a weekend or a week-long event. It was a long-term mobilization or, at the state level.
So was there ever a time that you served with live ammunition and that you had something that you had to do about it while you were in the National Guard?
Well, when we were mobilized, I mobilized in 2005. 2004 was the mobilization. We deployed in 2005 with the 42nd Division in New York. We went to Iraq, to Tikrit area. And like any other troop that goes, you're mobilized and trained and deployed with live ammo and all your goodies. So yeah, sure. So what I did was, so the National Guard is also, and the Army Reserve, we broke it into, I'll say that traditional 1 weekend a month, or AGR, Active Guard Reserve, where you're full-time, just like a, quote, as you would say, an active duty soldier. The difference being your focus is still at the National Guard level focus as terms of being an advocate for or working as part of the total Army team. You're the National Guard leg of that stool. And in October of 2000, I went full-time left New York, went down to DC, worked for National Guard Bureau headquarters, starting in October 2000. I did that until when I retired in 2016. I was at a meeting in Crystal City, which is across the way from the Pentagon, and the first plane went into the tower. After it kind of came apparent what was going on, the meeting was scrubbed, and we go across to the Pentagon to South Parking to do our pickup shuttle, or otherwise just get out of the building. And as we're coming across the South parking lot, me and a gaggle of gals, the plane went in. So that's how that whole thing started for us.
What'd you do?
So, oddly, so back in the day, we didn't have we're not wearing camouflage uniform. You're wearing the Army corporate dress. So short sleeve business suit with the nylon slacks, which look like hell. Terrible outfit, by the way. So we start running toward the explosion because, what the hell? And to see people, civilians, military coming out of the Pentagon about the time we're coming through. So we're getting close to the south, around the corner where the plane went in, and the police were showing up and other law enforcement, and they kept stopping this gaggle of people that keeps growing as we're running. And as we got to the last one, because I never could hear what we say, oh yeah, go, go, go. We get to the last guy, they all thought we were chaplains. So run over here so their blast site is. Because there was no rank, in terms of what branch you were on your uniform, so they just figured we were chaplains. So that's why I ended up at ground zero there at the Pentagon, and spent the rest of the day doing that kind of rescue recovery work. So it was pretty chaotic in the, I'll say, the military organized way. At first, people were struggling and pushing to get in because the other sides of where the jet went in was not completely collapsed. So there was open areas, there was an open stairwell access point, that was blown open, and et cetera. So people were running inside and finding people as they could and trying to pull them out and things like that. So as I got to the opening, it's funny how things get organized quickly, right? So they have this guy standing there like a bouncer at a club, and he puts his arm across and he goes, "You can't. Where are you going? You can't go in without a litter buddy." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? What, do we have rules now?" And he goes, "No, you need a litter buddy and a stretcher to get in there." I yell, "I need a litter buddy." Guy waves in back, "I'll be your litter buddy. Get the F up here," you know. So guys pushing through the crowd. You know, I'm a young major, and there's this 1-star general, and he goes, "What are you looking at me for? You're in charge. Let's go." So we have a litter by this time we get from somebody, and we go charging in, and I think we get about 20, 30 feet in front of there inside, and everything starts collapsing around us. So we run out with nobody. And so that wasn't very successful, obviously. And then things really started coming down. So everybody's, you know, moving away. And then we had some guidance. You know, people are yelling, "Hey, we need volunteers over here, over there." So we go over to the spot, and they're starting up these triage teams as the rescue effort is bringing more fire rescue type apparatus to the site. So we set up different triage teams, and I was on one of the red triage teams, which is, you know, in the red, amber, green. Red is the worst, the most wounded they bring you to. So you got more advanced care there. And we had a crash course from a young Navy corpsman she was great. "Okay, here's how you do, for instance, IV and lactose ringers. Watch, because I got one spare here." So, okay, you all saw that, you know, you're all qualified. So how to do emergency tracheotomies, pick a thing. And so we set up the tent, all the oxygen apparatus, like a little MASH setup almost, very small, two beds. And we would no sooner set it up, and then we get, incoming plane, tear the whole thing down and run 100-some yards to the overpass tunnel nearby. So, which was exhausting. So after the third time we did that, I said, "Screw it, I don't care what we're doing. We're not taking this stuff down again." And so by the time that went on the third time, the F-16s came by. The first one, they were out of Oceana, NAS, but came by probably 200 feet. Very emotional. But so we knew that no more incoming planes were going to happen because we had air cover. And so after they came over, you knew there was going to be no more worries with incoming air.
Yeah.
And so that rapidly, I mentioned, we went on a different triage team. So I was on the red triage team, and red, amber, green, red being the worst. So the sad part of that was, you know, we had multiple victims come in, get littered over to us that day, and, you know, not one made it through the day. It was terrible to watch, a lot of suffering. I gloss over it so I don't have to describe it in detail. But the one thing that sticks with me that was, I don't have the timeline. It was kind of chaotic. And I remember looking over, and there was this lady who had gotten out of the Pentagon, and she had like a dress or a skirt or something on, so you could see her legs. And she was very badly burned and blackened. You know, I didn't know what ethnicity she even was, and she was in a lot of pain and had sort of sat down on a little piece of curb or rubble thing, and the flesh on her legs was down by her ankles. It was all peeled back, and you know, I was maybe, you know, 50, 75 feet from her, maybe 100 feet. I don't remember. I was close enough to be able to see it all. And she's not, I was just so frozen, and, you know, it was very shocking. I couldn't move, and I feel bad to this day about that. And then it wasn't a long time, but a first responder kind of guy, he went over there, another person went over there, carried her somewhere. But that was shocking to see her walk. I didn't see her really walk out, but I saw her sort of sit down. Then I realized what was around her legs. Oh, her skin had peeled off so grossly. But got through the day, and that wound down after a point, the triage, because there's a point where you're just not getting people. There was a wave in the first, hour and a half, maybe, I guess afterwards, things were getting organized. But then the day went on, it got late in the day. Okay, we're going to break up. So put everything away. So I'm walking west from the Pentagon up, not 395, but going west up that way. Because I was at National Guard Bureau building, which is, about a mile something away from there. And I was cutting through the grass, and I came across this red shoe, ladies' high heel shoe kind of thing. And I didn't really think about it at first, other than I realized it was a dress shoe, which was certainly odd in the middle of the field. And then I realized this is from the blast a quarter mile away, because her foot was still inside it. What was left of it obviously was chopped right off. And so I turned around, and I went back, and I found some law enforcement. That's all right. So I found some law enforcement folks, and I brought them back to the site to have them account for it, and then kept walking. So, you walk home, because no cars were moving at that point. End of the day, supper time, a little after supper. So got home later that early evening and back to the apartment. You just get up and you got to keep moving until you go to work. And work is different and uncertain, but you show up and you do shit. You go through the motions, if nothing else. What are you going to do? Go find your car. Go get your car. I remember, and I'm kind of out of sequence, but I remember early on with the whole meeting after the Pentagon, we were there, and I'm calling on the cell phone back to where I worked. Cell phones were new then, it was a rule of thumb. And I had trouble getting through, and I got a hold of our XO, Colleen Martin. And she's like, what the hell's going on? She said, I'm telling him here. I said, just send anybody with medical anything, blah, 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 because, I can't get through. Lines are really plugged, and, circuits are busy, as they say. So, I don't know who she got a hold of, but I'm sure she got a hold of some people, because it was just a crazy, crazy thing. I mean, you got 1,000 people trying to help, multiple thousands, that whoever was left inside that you don't know. And it just was, it brought out in a lot of ways, in such a sad, bad moment, you see the best in people, everybody helping everybody. Not knowing nothing about anything. I remember, in terms of not knowing anything, here I am, a young guy, and I remember we're standing there at one point, and somebody in the crowd says, well, this means war. And I'm like, what the fuck do you know about that? I mean, because, I don't know anything in the grand scheme of it all, and we all know what happened next. But you're just dealing with the aftermath of it all. And I think it's almost like a delayed shock. You learn you got to work in the moment. You might be unhappy, or you get through it, and then the next day you start reflecting, and it's harder. And then you'll go by a week, and it's harder yet. And you think about, you Monday morning quarterback everything you did or didn't do. Unhelpful, by the way.
What was the National Guard's mission after 9/11? Where were you guys at?
So I stayed where I was working. I was working a project, a futures project, where the now Pennsylvania National Guard has these striker units. It's the 6 or 8-wheeled vehicle, mobile infantry carrier, so to speak, in layman's terms. But I was working that project, so I went back to working it. Oddly, if there's a silver lining of anything that came out of 9/11, so we had to go to the Pentagon about 2-3 months later to brief the status of this project. I was working with my 3-star, the head of the Guard Bureau, and it was there was friction with the Guard and the active component about it, and about the cost and all kinds of other factors. So we get to the Pentagon, to the briefing room, and So, typical big long table. Head guy sits in front, left and right. I'm the briefer, so I sit to the right of the head guy, and my boss, the 3 stars, across the table, and all the guys are really unhappy to see the guardsmen show up, and the general walks over. Hey, Tom, how's it going? And they're like, oh, he knows him. He was the general on 9/11. That was my litter buddy. So I'd like to think that had no influence over us doing well that day with the briefing, but the briefing went well. You keep moving. I mean, every anniversary is a little different, but the same. First time I went to the Pentagon to look at the memorial, the first time I went, and now mind you, I worked at the Pentagon for off and on for several years after this. I had 2 other assignments follow on way post 9/11 in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. So I went back to the Pentagon Memorial on the 20th anniversary, a few years ago now. And that was the first time I actually went there, because when you look at it, you remember things, and good and bad. So you got to keep moving. It doesn't go away. It evolves, probably. I think everybody would say it's the same, but it's not always. I think when you say, how do you deal with it? I think there's always value in talking to the buddies, whether they're there or not, that have shared experiences, loved ones that understand what it's like. I mean, a different example would be when you're deployed and we cut up and we joke and talk about all this, quote, stupid stuff that happens on deployment. It probably doesn't sound very funny or whatever to folks that haven't been in that situation ever before, but that's your way of dealing with it. You talk about what you remember, the good times. Oh, that bullet missed me by a mile. I remember I was at a breakfast one time. I was at a meeting in Colorado, and I was having breakfast at this place before I went into the mountain. And the waitress says to me, "Oh, were you in the Army?" And I'm in uniform. I go, "Gee, what gave it away?" And she's like, "Oh, have you been deployed?" I go, "Yeah, a couple times." She goes, "It must be terrible we getting shot at." I said, "I don't mind it at all. It doesn't bother me a bit." She goes, "You don't mind getting shot?" I go, "No, it's the getting hit part I don't like." I mean, it's Army humor. You got to get used to it. But that's how, joking aside, that's how you deal with it. And at least in my case, you got to look at the bright things that you learned that came out of the bad times. And you just keep moving forward.